women's suffrage throughout the ages. Some things look different, but one thing that remains the same is women fighting for their vote and their voice and the vote and the voice of others. My first piece is an excerpt of an essay written by Mary Wollstonecraft in the late 1800s titled A Vindication on the Rights of Women. In a book on female rights and manners, the works written specifically for their improvement mustn't be overlooked, especially when the book says explicitly that women's minds are weakened by false refinement, and that when improvable reason is regarded as the dignity that raises men above the lower animal and puts the natural scepter in a feeble hand, those instructive works regard women as beings of a subordinate kind and not as a part of the human species. In the government of the physical world, it is observable that the female is, so far as strength is concerned, inferior to the male. This is the law of nature, and this physical superiority can't be denied, but men, not content with this natural preeminence, try to sink us lower still. I am aware of an obvious inference. From every direction I have heard protests against masculine women. But if their target is the imitation of manly virtues, or the achieving of the talents and virtues that ennoble the human character and raise females in the scale of animal being under the comprehensive label mankind, all those who view women with a philosophical eye must join me in wanting women to grow more and more masculine every day. Women are so much degraded by mistaken notions of female excellence that this artificial weakness produces in them a tendency to tyrannize and gives birth to cunning, the natural opponent of strength, which leads them to exploit those contemptible infantile airs that undermine esteem even while they excite desire. Let men become more chaste and modest, and if women don't become correspondingly wiser, it will be clear they have weaker understandings. I hardly need to explain I'm talking about the female sex in general. Many women have more sense than their male relatives. Some women govern their husbands without degrading themselves because intellect will always govern. Where there's a constant struggle for an equilibrium, nothing will swing the scales its way unless it naturally has a greater weight. My second piece was written as a satirical song for women at the height of the women's suffrage movement in the early 1900s. A suggested campaign song by Alice Duer Miller. We are waging, can you doubt it, a campaign so calm and still no one knows a thing about it, and we hope they never will. No one knows what we oppose, and we hope they never will. We are ladylike and quiet, here a whisper, there a hint, never speech is banned a riot, nothing suitable for print. No one knows what we oppose, for we never speak for print. Sometimes in profound seclusion, in some far but home-like spot, we will make a dark illusion. We're opposed to you know what. No one knows what we oppose, for we call it you know what. My next piece was a news article written shortly after the 2020 election detailing a more current form of women's suffrage. How Stacey Abrams, Latasha Brown, and other black women changed the course of the 2020 election, by Courtney Connolly. As the 2020 presidential election came down to the wire, it was clear that black women continued to be the Democratic Party's most powerful voting group. Not only did 91% of black women vote for Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden, according to NBC News exit poll results, but black women have also been on the front lines of this year's election, working to ensure that all eligible voters have their voices heard at the polls. In Georgia, Stacey Abrams, who ran for governor of the state in 2018, has been on the ground to ensure that voter suppression does not dictate the outcome of this year's election. 2 years ago, she lost the gubernatorial race amid reports of voter suppression in the state. Between 2010 and 2018, Georgia's Secretary of State during that time purged upwards of 1.4 million voters from the polls, with many voter registrations being cancelled because a person didn't vote in the previous election. 53,000 people had their registrations moved to pending because of the state's exact match law, and of those 53,000, more than 80% of those registrations belonged to black voters. After her 2018 loss, Abrams started a voting rights organization called Fair Fight, which focused on increasing voter participation as well as education about elections and voter rights. As a result of these efforts, it's estimated that more than 800,000 new people have registered to vote in Georgia since 2018, with Abrams telling NPR that 45% of these new voters are under the age of 30 and 49% are people of color. In addition, Abrams tells NPR that she and her team were able to get rid of the exact match policy before the 2020 election. Similar to Abrams, LaTosha Brown, co-founder of the Black Voters Matter Fund, which works to increase voter registration and turnout and expand voting rights policies, used an election loss to fuel her desire to create change. In 1998, Brown ran for State Board of Education in Alabama's 5th District against incumbent Democrat Willie Paul. It was her first time running for office, and Brown tells CNBC Make It the race was so close it took 7 days for the winner to be announced, with Brown losing by a little over 200 votes. Minutes after the election was certified, she said she received a call from the state's Democratic Party letting her know 800 ballots had been found in a safe by a county sheriff. Brown says she was told it was too late for the ballots to be counted. I was so disappointed, says Brown, who now lives in Atlanta. I realized after that experience that voter suppression is more common than we think it is. I kept talking to candidates and being a part of elections where time and time again I would see that voter suppression was a strategy that was used often to prevent people from voting or having their vote count. Today, Brown's Black Voters Matter Fund does work to ensure that Black communities are not only registered to vote, but also understand the power of their vote, as well as advocating for the expansion of voting rights policies that include early voting, resistance to voter ID laws, and a strengthening of the Voting Rights Act. As Congresswoman Maxine Waters told SMNBC's Joy Reid after Vice President Kamala Harris's historical nomination, Black women have shown that not only will they vote, but they will get out the vote and they will fight for the vote. My final piece is a motivational poem written by Charlotte Perkins Gilman titled simply, We as Women. There's a cry in the air about us. We hear it before, behind of the way in which we as women are going to lift mankind. Fair sisters, listen one moment and perhaps you'll pause for 10, for the business of women as women is only with men as men. But to elevate public opinion and to lift up erring man is the work of the human being. Let us do it if we can. But wait, warm-hearted sisters, not quite so fast so far. Tell me how we're going to lift a thing any higher than we are. We are going to purify politics and to elevate the press. We enter the foul paths of the world to sweeten and cleanse and bless. To hear the high things we are going to do and the horrors of man we tell. One would think we as women were angels and our brothers were fiends of hell. Aren't we that were born of one mother and reared in the self-same place in the school and the church together, we of one blood, one race, now then all forward together. But remember everyone that 'tis not by feminine innocence that the work of the world is done. The world needs strength and courage and wisdom to help and feed. When we, as women, bring these to man, we shall lift the world indeed. Thank you.